My name is Jason, and this is Just Watches. Today we have an interesting watch on loan for review. If you are familiar with the Two Broke Watch Snobs podcast, this is Kaz's Orient Star GMT. Now, I'm a huge fan of Orient Star, and this watch is no exception. I'm a bit sad to report I don't think they make this particular watch anymore, but I hope they bring it back or something similar in the near future. Now, before we get to the review, if you're enjoying the contents of this channel, I invite you to subscribe, and if you like the contents of this individual video, please give it a thumbs up. Thank you so much. For price and availability, at the time of this recording, I don't really see this watch for sale anywhere, save for a few eBay listings. When this watch was available, it cost just shy of $1,000. The case is 41.5 millimeters in diameter, 49.5 millimeters lug to lug, but the solid end lengths do extend past the ends of the case, giving the watch a true lug to lug length of 51 millimeters. It's also quite thick at 14 millimeters and then has a 21 millimeter lug width opening. Now with those dimensions, the case sounds quite beefy, and a large portion of the thickness comes from the case back, which does introduce lug float on my wrist. That being said, it doesn't wear quite as big as it sounds, and the case finishing is very nice, with long, swooping, high polished bevels on the tops of the mid case, and then clean brushing on the tops and sides of the mid case. The lugs turn down ever so slightly, and on the bracelet it wears surprisingly comfortably. The bracelet starts at 21 millimeters and then tapers down to 18 before jumping back up to 20 at the clasp. The solid end links have a touch of play, but the articulation between the back of the watch and between the links is excellent, two factors that are important in the overall comfort of a bracelet. The 3-link style is also very nicely finished, with consistent brushing on the top and sides, and then 2 high polish sections on the inner part of the outer links. The signed clasp is small, but still provides 3 micro adjusts, and then the scissor is fully milled. The clasp also closes very flush to the bracelet. Finally, sizing is accomplished with pins and collars. If you need help with that system, I will link to a guide on my channel. Overall, the bracelet is really nice, it looks great on the watch, and is very comfortable. So this movement is a hacking, hand-winding, 21,600 vibration per hour movement with a 40-hour power reserve and a power reserve indicator showing you just how much power you have left on the mainspring. It also features a collar GMT hand, meaning the crown moves the GMT hand rather than the hour hand. I'm not sure what the stated accuracy is on this movement, but this one is running plus 15 to 16 seconds a day in the dial up position, and then plus 17 to 8 seconds a day with the crown up. The 7mm push-pull crown is nicely knurled and signed, but is a touch thin in profile, so it can be a little tricky to wind the watch. The winding action is very tactile and satisfying, and it's really fun to watch the power reserve indicator respond to hand winding the watch. The flat sapphire crystal is the smallest touch, proud of the bezel. Now, I thought only Seiko had anti-reflective coating this good, but it seems Orient Star also has a magic formula of AR, which makes the crystal just disappear from certain angles. Why more watches don't use AR this good is a mystery to me, but on this watch in particular, it really helps the beautiful dial hands and indices pop. So let's talk about this dial. At the edge, there's a chapter ring that has the 24-hour GMT track on it, and then at the very edge of the actual dial are dashes for the minutes. The dial itself is a fantastic blue with vertical bars. This, in combination with the sunburst effect of the dial, makes the dial very vibrant and different depending on the lighting conditions. The indices are applied and have both complex geometry and varied surface finishings, which make them catch light in various and interesting ways. At 12, we have a recessed area for the 40-hour power reserve indicator. I know power reserves are dividing, but I love them. It's also sort of Orient Star's thing that they put a power reserve on most of their watches. Even the track under the power reserve is nicely finished with a high polished bevel. The Orient Star logo is applied at 6, along with 3 lines of text, with GMT in red to match the GMT hand. Finally, the date is nicely framed at 3, with a half index. The hour and minute hands are extremely nicely finished in a way that Orient Star seems to like to use on their hands. The top is brushed, and then both sides of the hands angle away with a high polished finish. Again, this helps the hands catch light in different ways, and then really improves their overall legibility. Then the hour and minute hand are also loomed, which helps as well. The minute hand is also plenty long, reaching all the way to the dashes at the edge of the dial. The second hand is a high polished stick with a nice counterbalance. The GMT hand is done in red, which really helps set it apart from the rest of the hands, and it has a nice loomed triangle at the end. Finally, we even have a little hand for the power reserve indicator, and they even went as far as gabling that little hand as well. While there isn't that much surface area for it, the lume is responsive and bright and holds its own against Notice and Serica here, both of which have good lume. So here is the watch on my 6 3/4 inch wrist. You can see with that 51mm true lug-to-lug distance, it basically extends to the very top and bottom of my wrist, but depending on your own personal taste, I think this watch still works. Just keep in mind the lugs will float a bit if your wrist is my size or smaller. So pros and cons, starting with the pros. Let's start with this incredible dial. I love the vertical stripes and that blue that just looks different from so many different angles. And then the finishing on the hands and indices is also excellent. Second, you have that basically invisible crystal because of how good the anti-reflective coating is. And then third, the bracelet is quite comfortable. And while the watch is big, the bracelet really balances the watch well, so it is quite comfortable on that bracelet. As for cons, the first is that 21mm lug width opening. Japanese brands tend to have odd millimeter lug widths, which unfortunately it makes it harder to find straps for them in the US because we commonly have even sized lug widths. Second, I think the crown could be a touch wider in profile to make it a little easier to grip. And then finally, while the watch wears well, I think it is a bit too thick and chunky for my personal preference and wrist size. I would love to see them somehow slim this watch down a little bit and maybe even shrink it in diameter. As for comparables, well, when this watch came out, the comparable list was much shorter, but with the introduction of Seiko's NH34 GMT movement, we have seen a ton of GMTs enter the market. For a very affordable GMT, I would recommend you check that out, Seiko's new GMT in the Seiko 5 line. I have a review you can check out on this channel. For the same price, you could consider something like the Baltic Aquascape GMT. I still need to get my hands on a Baltic, but I've heard great things, and I'm eager to check one out. And then for a bit more, you could get a Seiko Sharp Edge series GMT, which would be closer in overall style to this Orient Star GMT. So there you have it, the Orient Star GMT. What do you think about this watch? Let me know in the comment sections below. As always, if you're enjoying the contents of this channel, I invite you to subscribe. And if you like the contents of this individual video, please give it a thumbs up. That's all for this time. My name is Jason, and you have been watching Just Watches.